Hello, and welcome to On the Marie Curie Couch, the podcast that aims to break down taboos and start open, honest conversations about death and dying. I'm Jason Davidson. I'm a social worker by profession, and I've worked in palliative care, hospice care, and bereavement support services for more than a decade. Each episode, we'll be speaking to a well-known guest to find out about how they feel about their own mortality and how their personal experience of bereavement has shaped the way they live their life. Today, I'm on the Marie Curie Couch with Fleur East. Born in London, Fleur's a singer who rose to fame in 2014 when she wowed the judges and public alike with her performances on The X Factor, finishing in second place. Since then, she's worked as a singer-songwriter and radio presenter and currently hosts The Breakfast Show on Hits Radio. Fleur's released 2 studio albums and was runner-up on Strictly Come Dancing in 2022, achieving a perfect score of 40 for her Beyoncé-inspired Couples Choice dance in Blackpool. Fleur lives in London with her husband, Marcel. Well, Fleur East, welcome to the Marie Curie Couch.
Thank you.
How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Excited to be talking to you today.
Good. One of the aims of our podcast is to encourage conversations around death and dying, and particularly bereavement and grief. What we know is from people who listen to the podcast is that hearing other people's experiences can bring comfort and feel supportive. So can I start by asking if you can tell me about a significant bereavement you've experienced, Fleur, in your life?
So for me, it was my father who passed away in 2020, March 2020, just before the first official lockdown and the pandemic. And it was very sudden. He had a cardiac arrest in the night, in his sleep. Completely out of nowhere, no preparation. There were no signs of anything really significant to do with his health or anything that we should be worried about. I was even talking to him just before he'd gone to bed that night. So it was a complete shock. And yeah, it's only been 3 years since we lost him. And I mean, it's just, life has just never really been the same without him. I think it's taken me and my sister quite a while to accept that he's not here anymore. I think even going through significant milestones like birthdays, and just even me as a performer, like doing any kind of jobs, performing anywhere, releasing music, all of the things that my dad would be there to experience with me have been really hard to get through for the first time without him. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you hear from a lot of people that have lost parents or anyone close to them, and you never really think it's going to be you. You kind of foolishly think, oh, that's really sad that happened to that person. But, that's not me, and that's really just not, you don't even comprehend that that's ever going to happen to you until it does. And then you're like, wow, okay, this is what this feels like. And it's a pain that you can't really explain or describe, I don't think.
What do you recall about those hours and days after your dad died?
I remember just kind of being in, I don't know, a state of like delusion, I guess. Like I didn't really believe that it had actually happened, that he wasn't there anymore. Just wasn't even registering. Even the moment when, because we had paramedics come to our house and they were trying to resuscitate my dad. And I remember the paramedics saying to me, there's nothing we can do now. This is it. Even if we take your father to the hospital, there's nothing we can do. And I was sort of going, so what do you mean? I don't get it. And she was literally looking at me and going, well, usually after 10 minutes of resuscitation, we would pronounce it as a death. And we've been here for half an hour. And I was going, okay, I don't understand what you're telling me. Even in those moments, nothing was sinking in until she literally had to spell it out for me, I guess. And then, yeah, the days after that, yeah, complete shock and denial, I think, for about a week, to be honest with you. Um, but I then had the reality check because I was one of the executors of my dad's will. So having to then deal with all of the particulars and paperwork and, his assets and things like that, that made it very real for me. But until that point, no, I was completely in denial.
So he'd done a will and
Hmm.
he'd made some preparations himself by the sounds of it. And can I ask, did you know what he wanted for his funeral? Or did the family, had those conversations ever taken place?
No, we never had those conversations. He was very organized in the sense that, yes, he had a will, and it was almost quite funny looking through his things and finding a book with every single password for every single account he had, pin codes for bank accounts, like everything was in one place. And it was almost like there were moments where we were going, wow, thanks, Dad. Like you've made this really simple and really easy. But in terms of no funeral arrangements, we'd never really spoken about that. We didn't really know what he wanted. We'd never prepared for anything like that. And as well, because it was during the pandemic, we couldn't have a proper funeral. We had to have quite a small, intimate one of just, I think, 8 of us were there. My father's siblings couldn't all be there because there were some that lived outside of London. So they couldn't even get to us. We didn't even get to see them until after the pandemic. We couldn't even hug or kiss each other at the funeral because we weren't allowed to come into contact with each other. We couldn't even have a wake after the funeral because we weren't allowed to gather. So there were many things that were very unusual at that time for us.
How was all of that for you? Well, for you and the family?
It was very difficult because we couldn't comfort each other in the way that you naturally instinctively would. Like, you want to be around your loved ones, you want to hug each other, you want to comfort each other, and we couldn't do any of that. And I think it was really sad that my dad's sisters couldn't be there because they literally couldn't experience anything. They couldn't be there for me and my sister. They couldn't grieve with us. It was very detached, and there was a huge disconnect in that way. So that was very difficult. But in terms of grieving, I think in a lot of ways, and this might sound weird, but it was sort of a blessing in a way that we didn't have to face everybody all at once. Immediately after my dad had passed away, we didn't have to have the huge funeral with everyone coming up to us and asking us how we were. And we didn't have people visiting us, the week after he died and having to rehash everything and, explain everything over and over again. We sort of didn't have that experience, which in some ways I'm grateful for because I got to process it all on my own and with my sister and my immediate family. I didn't have to deal with all of the emotions all at once. I got to break it down in that way. So, I mean, in some ways, we look back now, me and my sister, and we're sort of grateful that it did happen when it did.
So that you could have, I suppose, a bit more time, a bit more peace, for
Mm,
want of a better word, to begin processing, think about what was happening. Do you know, I was struck there when, and I'd not really thought about this, but your dad's sisters.
mm,
So that thing about because his death was so sudden and unexpected and shocking. One of the things we do know is in deaths where they've been sudden and they're shocking and it's difficult for anybody to get their head around a death. But I think particularly in those situations, some of the things that can make it feel real is by attending the funeral and being part of those
yeah.
things and being with others and having them conversations. So I think it's a kind of double whammy, isn't it, really? I think, for all of you. But just in that, what's going on and what's happened and how real is this? Because I'm not getting a sense of it. I can't go to the funeral. I can't see it.
Exactly. And I think there were so many stages of the grieving process that his siblings couldn't even experience because they couldn't actually physically be there and go through it. And yeah, it was very, very difficult in that sense and to deal with those things. But I think nothing can really prepare you for anything like that. And I was grateful for that peace and for that respite that we had and for that time to just deal with it personally. And in a weird way, it sounds odd, but when you're going through something like this, it's so big in your world that you can't comprehend anyone else living life. Like, it's like, I remember even like the next day hearing people laugh outside my window. And I remember thinking, how dare you? Like, how are you even laughing right now? How are you experiencing happiness when I'm going through something so horrible? And when the pandemic happened and everyone had to be locked down in their homes, it was almost like everyone was grieving with me. That's what it felt like. It was like, yeah, the world has stopped. And yeah, everyone should take time and everyone should be in their homes. And how dare anyone go to work and even live life? Like, my father's passed away. That's what it felt like. So then it was even harder in a way coming out of the pandemic when everyone started to go back to normal life. Because then I then had even more reality checks, because it was, oh, going to work for the first time without my dad being here, walking on the street for the first time, or seeing people that I knew in my life for the first time and having to tell them that my dad wasn't here anymore, or having to explain what had happened or how I felt. I didn't have to do any of those things for such a long time that when we came back into the normal world, that was really weird to deal with.
You know that was going to happen? Were you dreading it, or did it just happen and then hit you?
Yeah, I was kind of dreading it because there were so many people that I hadn't spoken to or I hadn't communicated with after my dad had passed away. And I really didn't want those moments to happen where, for example, you just bump into someone you know and they go, oh my gosh, how's your dad? How is he? Like, that question, I didn't want that to happen. And that happened. And I had to deal with that. And it was very awkward. And it was very uncomfortable. And it was quite painful. So those moments were very difficult. And I was dreading them. I wasn't looking forward to them.
For people listening, I think there's, lots about what you're saying will ring true. I think certainly that, everybody I've spoken to, not just on this podcast, since we've been doing the podcast for the last 3 years, but also in my work in hospice care, or work in Marie Curie and bereavement support, talk about that feeling of when your world stops. It's the sort of strangest thing to see and hear life still going on outside your window or outside of your home. And, I think that can last a while for people as well. Some people talk about being almost in a kind of robotic state for those kind of, days, weeks and months afterwards as well. And someone we were talking to on the podcast recently was describing kind of almost being wrapped in cotton wool, and not in a protective way, but in like a muffled sound way, kind of over their ears. And I was just thinking also that those conversations with others, bumping into people on the street, not wanting to have it. It's like, how am I feeling today? Am I resilient enough to have this conversation? And I don't want to see anybody. And the likelihood is, if they do know, they might be feeling the same as well. We hear about some people, friends, neighbors, people who you've always known, seeing you on the street and, their heart's sinking because they're just, oh, what am I going to say? Because they know, and they've got that dread as well. Is there anything that was helpful, do you think, that people said, or was there anything that helped you in those situations for people listening?
It's interesting because you never really know what to say. I remember me and my sister immediately saying, we don't want this to affect us in a negative way. And we didn't want it to be something that, I don't know, changed us like in a bad way. We didn't want to become angry people, or like angry at the world, or, harbor all these negative, dark feelings because we'd lost our father. So immediately we were like, we need to have some therapy. But of course, because it was during the pandemic, we weren't allowed to go anywhere. So we joined like this therapy app and started getting sessions just over FaceTime. And that helped. That helped a lot, because I didn't realize at the time, but I was trying to be really strong for everyone around me. So my husband was really upset. He was very close to my dad, and I didn't want to be upset and crying around him all the time. My sister, she's my younger sister, and I was dealing with my father's will and the funeral and everything with my uncle, and my sister wasn't really involved in that side of things. And I didn't want to be upset every time I was talking to her either. So I was always trying to be that strong person. And it was only until I had my first therapy session. And I think the opening question was, so what's been happening with you? And I just literally broke down and I cried so much. And I felt like before then, I was like, oh, I've cried all the tears I need to cry. I'm done now. I'm kind of got over that bit. And then as soon as I started talking about it outside of my family and everyone, I just couldn't stop crying. And I realized that I really wasn't done with that phase of it, and probably will never be. Like, there's times where I'm absolutely fine. And then there's other times where I'll be so sad. Like, I did the first show since losing my dad just last week. And it was the first time I'd done like my own headline show without him. And I remember, like, before going into rehearsal, and I was on the phone to my husband and I was just sobbing on the phone. And he was like, it's okay. Like, you can feel this way. It's fine. And I was like, I just want to be happy, like rehearsing for my show. And I feel like I can't be happy because he's not here. And it's like I'm doing what I love and he's not here to watch it. And it was really difficult because music is the thing that brings me the most joy. And without him being there, it was really hard. But then at the same time, reconnecting to music has been the thing that has helped me deal with it a lot, because it was the thing that connected me to my dad. So now it's something that makes me feel more in touch with him in a way.
I was just thinking about those first time of doing something, without your dad, and just, I mean, how understandably hard all that is. And it's lovely just to hear you talk about reconnecting with music. And that's something that's important, to you both. I was struck by what you said about your experience of going on the online app and having some therapy after your dad died. And I think this is a good point actually for people listening, because I think what you've just described there is what we know about having a conversation with someone who's outside of the experience, who doesn't know you, doesn't know your dad, and is essentially a stranger. Then there's no expectation on you. You don't have to be the big sister. You don't have to worry about your younger sister and how she's feeling. You don't have to think, shall I bring it up now? Or shall I ask this? Or shall I have this conversation? Or I'll remain strong and I'll, because she needs me right now, or they need me right now. Actually, you don't have to protect that person at the other end of the phone or FaceTime or in person. If you're with a therapist or a counselor, you don't have to protect them at all. The focus is simply on you, and it's a completely safe space to be able to, as you've described, bring some of that stuff you hadn't even thought about yourself.
Yeah. And I think that definitely helped both me and my sister. That was something that we really did rely on to help get us through it. And then while we were going through the therapy, we were kind of therapizing each other in a way. It was like we were getting onto FaceTime, and we would be on FaceTime sometimes for 4 hours, and we'd just be talking all day. And it would be, I think at first, my sister wouldn't really mention my dad a lot. Like, we'd kind of talk about things around it, but she wouldn't really mention him. And I knew that, I don't know, from experiences or other people's stories that I'd heard, I knew that talking about the person can really help, because I think the more you sort of deny that it hasn't happened, or you get into a habit of not mentioning them, then you can bury a lot of emotions. And I've heard from other people who've lost people that sometimes it comes to a point where they never speak of the person. And it's almost like if anyone brings them up, they just shut the conversation down completely. And that's not really the best way to deal with it, from my experience anyway. I don't think that would be a healthy way. I feel like there's a lot of joy in me talking about my father and bringing things up about him and remembering him and processing it in a really healthy way and realizing that he is gone, but now this is how I live every day without him here. And I think even for people that don't know my dad, for example, I just did Strictly Come Dancing and my partner, my dance partner Vito, was with me every day. We were training all the time. And I spoke about my dad a lot with him. And after that show was finished, he said to me, I feel like I know your father so much because you've spoken about him all the time. I feel like I know Malcolm. Like I feel like I've met him almost. And that made me really happy because I was like, I love that you've got a real picture of him and a sense of his personality. And because I would have loved to have introduced you to him, but now I feel like in some way I have. And I feel like, I don't know, it serves as like you're doing a good service to that person to keep their memory alive and to keep them in your life even after they've gone.
That's so true. And, not everybody will need or want therapy or counseling after somebody's died. And what we do know is just that storytelling, having conversations with people who knew him, or even, as you're describing, people who didn't know him, where you get the opportunity to talk about him. And actually, my next question, I was going to ask you what your dad's name was, and you've just said it was Malcolm. And I just wondered if you could tell me a bit about him.
Wow, what a character. He was like the life and soul of every occasion. He would light up a room. My dad would come into the room and everyone would notice him, either by what he was wearing, just by his personality. He would always make an impression on people. And anyone who met him always had like a real fond memory of him, or he would have said something to them that stuck with them, or just little things like he'd drop gems like in every conversation he'd have. He loved meeting people. He loved experiences. He traveled the world before he had me and my sister. And he was just an amazing personality. Like there's no one that ever met my dad that would easily forget him. Like he was just such a huge personality and full of laughter and was very inquisitive. Like if he met anybody, he would ask them so many questions to find out about them and who they were. And it's funny because since losing him, I've seen so much in myself that is my father as well. And I feel like you notice that more after they're gone. It's like there's so many things about my personality and my spirit that I know I've got from my dad. And so yeah, I guess that was him. And he's it's funny because you still feel like their presence in certain times. Like when I meet up with my family for dinner and we all sit around the table, there'll always be a story about my dad in that moment, because at any family dinner, he would take over the whole conversation. He would steer everything. He was like he was the one that would shine in the room. So yeah, I feel that we always remember him at moments like that.
Something people talk about in bereavement and grief called continuing bonds.
Mm.
So those continuing bonds we have with somebody even after they've died, and I think a big part of that continuing bond is that realization or starting to recognize all the things that actually he gave you or that you've inherited, them kind of parts
Mm.
of you that were parts of him, is, I would think, part of that continuing bond, isn't it? And also, as you just described, that he's always with you.
Yeah, and I definitely feel that. Definitely feel that. Through all my experiences, I just feel like he is there. And me and my sister, we got rings made from one of my father's rings, and we both wear them on our little finger. And anytime I'm about to do something, I'll just touch it. Subconsciously, I'll do it now. And I'm just like, okay, let's go, daddy-o. That's kind of what I say in my head. And I just feel that's just a comforting thing that I feel that he's there, or he's part of that experience once I've done that. And it's kind of helped me get through. It's weird. It's like I feel like now I have, it's like guardian that's constantly watching over me or is with me. And anytime I feel like I can't get through something, or I feel a bit anxious about something, I'll just do that. Like I'll just get hold of this ring on my little finger, and I'll just say like, let's go, daddy-o. And then straight away, I just feel a sense of calm, a sense of relief, a sense that he is there helping me through whatever that experience is.
That's a really important message, isn't it? You know, just that kind of, you can still feel supported by somebody and held and loved.
Yeah.
You know, even when they're not there. You mentioned before that you and your dad had a shared love of music, and I just wondered, was that part of his work, or was that just a passion for him?
No, it's just a passion. I mean, my dad was a DIY guy. He was doing painting and decorating and electrics and plumbing and all that stuff. That was his job. But he just loved music. It was in our house every single day. Like my mum and dad chose to play music through headphones onto my mum's stomach when she was pregnant with me. And they always told me that at the age of 2, I would sit in the back of the car and sing along to the radio. So before I was really even talking, I was singing. I was very musical from such an early age. And some of my weekends would be spent just sitting with my dad watching music television and watching music videos all weekend. It's literally all we would do. Or we'd get back home on a Friday after school and we'd just play our favorite album, put candles on in the house and just listen to the album just on repeat. Like while I was doing my homework or like while he was cooking dinner and while my mum was tidying the house. Music was such a big focus and such a, I guess, the center of my family and what brought my mum and dad together as well. So yeah, I feel like that's why now when I'm singing and writing and performing, I feel that connection to my dad because it was such a huge thing that was a bond between me and him.
Every 5 minutes, someone in the UK dies without the care and support they need. It's time for change. With your support, we can help more people get the care they urgently need. Visit mariecurie.org.uk/daffodil to donate to Marie Curie's Great Daffodil Appeal today.
I'm going to move on to some other questions in a second, but just before I do that, for people listening, and I realise it's 3 years since your dad died. You've touched on this already. You've already spoke about it. I just wondered if there's anything else you could add to what's been helpful for you in your grief over the last 3 years. What are some of the things that you know, have you not just found comforting, but you know, have supported you through it?
I think therapy was a big thing. Leaning on my family was another huge thing that got me through. Talking about him helped me a lot. I remember I went back to work 10 days after he'd passed away, and I was on the radio every day. And I think I even spoke about him the first day I was back. And I was just very honest. And I was like, you know, my father passed away sadly on this date. And, you know, it's been really tough. And I sort of just shared memories of him. And I found that talking about him a lot helped me deal with it. I don't know. It was like my own therapy for myself in a way, that when I mentioned him or just mentioned his name or shared a memory, that I just came to the realization that this was my life now. And I feel like if I didn't talk about him a lot, or if I buried it, it would have been a lot harder for me to deal with. I did other little things, like I had videos and voice notes of him. And so for the first few weeks, I would play them and listen to them. Sometimes I'd be driving in my car and I'd just play a voice note from him and I would just listen to it as if he was just talking to me. That was a real comfort. And in fact, I say to everyone now that has parents, they're luckily still in their lives, I always say, film as much as you can with them, you know, get them to send voice notes, just film videos, just talking to them, just like silly things like that, because when they're gone one day, those things will be so precious. Like I love things like that. I love looking at videos of my dad and on my wedding day and, you know, his speech on my wedding day and things like that. Those things really comforted me. And also, this is really silly, but this might be something that could help people. There was an item of clothing that my dad had in his wardrobe, and they were pilot trousers. So the ones that you sort of like jump into and they have like, I don't know, like the straps on. And they were like authentic, genuine pilot trousers. So they're like khaki green, zips all over them. And yeah, had the braces, that's it, that you'd put around. And he would never let me wear them. And I remember I'd always be like, Dad, please, can I just borrow it for this party? Can I just borrow it for this? And he'd be like, no, you're going to ruin them. Like, I wouldn't know what to do with myself if you ruin them, because I got these at a special market at this place. But I was like, okay. And then after he passed away, we were going through all of his clothes and I found them. And I remember sort of like chuckling to myself and to him, sort of, and going, see, Dad, you never let me wear them. But now I've got the chance to. And I think I wore them for like a good week after we'd come out of lockdown and we were allowed to go out. And I wore those trousers for like a week, like nearly every day that I was going into the radio and everywhere I was going. And it just, I don't know, it was just a weird thing that like connected me to my dad and made me feel like he was there, and sort of like a ha to him. Like, I'm wearing them now. You can't take them off me now, Dad. Like in a humorous way. It was just, it was really funny, but that was something that really connected me to him. And my sister also took, I think, a jacket of his and a hat of his. So we each had like items of clothing and we would like wear them and stuff. And that helped us as well.
Yeah, so lovely. I think they're lovely things to do. And it was interesting there, I think that kind of, as technology shifts and the world changes, there was a time when people didn't have mobile phones. And so, they wouldn't have those videos or photographs or messages on their phones. My dad died in 2017. And, not only do I still have his number in the phone
I do.
And his name, but also the text messages that we sent each other, and that can bring comfort. I mean, I kind of don't look at them very often now, but occasionally I do. And I've got pieces of clothing, from going to Spain in the 80s on holiday, and there being particular sports brands or t-shirts that my dad would wear, and I've got them now, they're kind of sitting in my wardrobe there. Yeah, they're really, really lovely things. And I think it's important to kind of, say that and say it out loud, because some people will say, oh, maybe I shouldn't be keeping those things, or maybe I shouldn't be wearing those things. And, I think, my message is, and as you've just described, is do it. And if it brings you comfort and closeness and, then, it's important. Fleur, listen, I'm gonna have a slight change of questions for a second. So as you know, Marie Curie is an organization. We support people who are living with a terminal illness and, through death and dying, and also bereavement and grief. And one of the things we do in our work is we will sort of encourage and gently support people to do some of that planning ahead. So that might be some practical things like, writing a will and getting some stuff sorted out and getting organized. But also it might involve, for those who can, have conversations about what they want for their funeral, what kind of care they want, where they want to be when they die. And just kind of thinking about that. Can I ask if you ever think about your own death and whether you've had some of them conversations with those around you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think anyone really wants to think about those things, and they always seem like really morbid and like, oh, what are you thinking about that for? Or like, you're really young, why are you even thinking about that? But when you lose someone really suddenly, or lose someone, period, it's just straight away you just think, oh my goodness, that we really are not here forever. We know that, but it never really hits you until you lose someone, and then you go, oh no, we're really not. Like this doesn't last forever then. Okay. And I remember being so grateful that my dad was so organized, like I said, and had everything in one place, and we didn't have to search through things. It was all there. It was relatively easy to deal with all of that side of things. And I decided to write my own will, and I'd never written one. And I didn't really want to, because I was just like, oh, I don't like the feeling of this. So I don't even want to write down who I'm going to leave this stuff to, or like, it's just so odd. But then I think when it becomes more of a reality that we are going to all leave this planet at some point, you then look at it more practically. So I remember sort of just going through the things, and I was like, well, none of that's even going to matter to me. Like, I'll be gone. So let's just look at this practically and logically. This is what I want to divide it between, and this is who I want to give this to and this to. And and I have had conversations with my husband and with my sister and my mom, and sort of said, You know, I'd like my funeral to be a really joyous occasion. I'd love for everyone to wear bright colors. I want you to play really uplifting music, like all my favorite songs. You know, I want it to be a really happy time. I don't want anyone to be sad and, you know, crying all day. I really want everyone to feel what my personality and my spirit is like. You know, I'm a really positive person. I love to laugh. I love to smile. I like to bring joy to people. And so I've expressed that that's what I would like for everyone to do, like, you know, at my funeral. But I don't think I would ever have had these conversations before my dad passed away. I mean, I never had those conversations before my dad died. And then as soon as he did, you know, it was like, okay, this is something that I really need to think about. So yes, I have had those conversations, and I have thought about that. And it almost makes you laugh as well when you think of the stresses that people have had in their lives. Like, there were so many things my dad would stress over. Like even our childhood home, there were so many worries he had about that. And like, you know, the mortgage and things like that. And just so many money worries he had. And then as soon as he died, I was like, you were worrying about all this for what? You know, it's like, you're gone, you're not taking any of it with you. It's completely pointless. We've sold our childhood home. We'd rather have you than the home. You know, it's like all these things. And then I started to really just focus on, or refocus on, the things that were important, and realize that half the stuff we're stressing about, we don't need to be stressing about. You do just see everything differently. And you think, actually, the things that are important are the connections I have with my loved ones, are the memories that I'm making, are the experiences we're having. Those are the things that I remember about my father. I don't remember any of the material things. I remember him being at my wedding. I remember him walking me down the aisle. I remember having dinners with him. I remember moments of him looking after me as a kid. And those are the things that are lasting. So even when it comes to writing a will or thinking of preparations for when you die, you might not want to think about it. But when you actually think about how you can value the moments that you have when you're here, planning those things is almost easier, because you're like, well, no, that's going to matter. And actually, I want to make it easier for the people that are here when I'm gone, because it's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot they're going to have to deal with. And all the particulars and documents and bank statements, all those things they've got to deal with, you want to make it as easy as you can for them, because there's going to be a lot on their plate outside of all of that. So when you think of it in that sense, it's easier to be practical and it's easier to plan.
Exactly, and that's our message as well. And it might not be the easiest thing, it might not be the most comfortable thing to do, but actually it takes a couple of hours, or it might take a couple of sessions with a solicitor. It's done, it's in an envelope, it's put in a drawer. And they're not conversations you have to have all the time about your funeral wishes. You know, you can even get them written down. I mean, you know, for people listening, you know, kind of simple funeral wishes can be added to a will as well. And I think that's just so true, what you were talking about there, about that kind of, you know, which many people will talk about when they've lost somebody so close to them and important and significant, is just that completely change of perspective about what was important, or what is important, and what's kind of life about. And, you know, yeah. Couple of more questions. Is legacy something that's important to you? So how you'd like to be remembered?
Yeah, do you know what? It's interesting, because after my dad passed away, me and my sister sat together and we were like, why are we not working together more as sisters, like as a family? What are we going to do for our father's legacy? Like, what do we want to do in his name? And we sat together and we started working together and decided to create a hair care brand, which we're now in the latter stages of. We've tried and tested all the products, sourced all of the ingredients from Ghana, where my mother's from, where we traveled to with my dad. And we've almost felt like creating a business together as a family is our legacy. And in a way, our father's legacy, because we immediately were like, we need to do something. Like, you know, when we leave this earth, we need to have something that we can say, okay, we've left this behind, or we've done this. And, you know, and it's in our father's name and it's in our name, and it's something that we can be proud of and something that can live on after we're gone. But we didn't ever think about that again before.
Yeah.
Like, why are we never working together? Why don't we have a business together? Why are we not putting our heads together and doing something as a family? And so that only really became important once our dad died. And sadly, you think, why does it take something like that to make you do things like this, or to work with your loved ones, or to become closer to your family? You know, for example, we started a WhatsApp group with all our family in after our dad died. We never had that group before. We would never talk as much as we do now. And now we share everything we're doing in that group. And every day, oh, this person's had a baby, pictures of the baby in the group. Oh, Fleur's doing this week, pictures from that event. You know, we never had that connection before. And now we do. So yeah, legacy has become really important now, actually, after dad died, because he left such a legacy just in who he was, just him as a person. It's like anyone that knew my dad, when you hear them talk about him, they're just like, oh my gosh, Malcolm, wow, he said this to me and it really hit me, or I had this conversation with him and I'll never forget when he told me this. And it's just, that was his legacy. And I guess me and my sister are his legacy. So we feel more of a sense of responsibility to do something, you know, with the chance that we've been given to be here, because he gave us that chance. And so, yeah, it's brought us a lot closer.
Is there anything you might say to someone listening who's grieving at the minute?
I would say, you're not alone in this. I remember feeling like no one's going to understand me. You know, no one understands the relationship I've had with my father, so they don't get it. And almost feeling like I was really alone. But when I reached out to other people and even listened to other people's experiences when they'd lost someone, I felt so uplifted. And that sounds weird to say, but I felt like I belonged to this secret club that I didn't even know existed, of people who lost loved ones. And the amount of people that reached out to me and messaged me and spoke to me. And even now, when I meet someone who's lost a parent, even talking to you right now, Jason, you're telling me that you lost your father, it's like straight away you just feel this bond with someone. It's something you can't explain, but you're like, I get it. And that is such a comfort. And you know, you won't be the last person to experience this. Everyone's going to experience this at some point. This is life. This is what we all have to go through. And it may feel like you can't even put one foot in front of the other right now. You might feel like there's no way I can even go through each day without this person. How can I even live without this person? But you do live without that person. You do put one foot in front of the other, and you do have a time where you can talk about them and smile. It's not going to be sad all the time, because I was worried about that. I felt like, oh, I'm never going to be able to talk about my dad without crying, or I'm never going to be able to share a memory about him without feeling really sad. And now, no, there's many times where I can talk about my dad and I laugh about the stuff he's done. And it brings me so much joy to share his memory with other people, and even with my family, and I just laugh about him. And even in a cheeky way, like as a child, things you can say about your parent and they can't pull you up on it because they're not here. I feel like he's like listening, and it's almost like I can have this like shared humor with my dad, even though he's not here. That's saying the things that I know would trigger him or get him really angry, and you know, he can't answer back now, and little things like that.
The banter.
Yeah, the banter. Like, it will get easier. It will get easier. It may feel horrible now, but there will come a day where you can smile about that person. And there are so many other people in your position. And I think it does help to share those experiences with others who've been through a similar thing, because you really do feel like, oh, okay, I'm not the only person. And yeah, this world is big. And there are a lot of people that have been through this, and so many more that will go through this. And I think when you realize that, it does help you. It does help you get through it.
My last question. How has it been for you having these conversations today on the podcast?
Yeah, it's been really interesting, because you never realize what emotions are going to stir up in you when you talk about this. Today, I would say having this conversation has been a relatively good conversation, because I haven't got too upset. Sometimes I could talk about it and get very, very down and very upset. there were even moments talking to you where I could really feel like the ball in my throat, and my eyes were tearing up. And it's just a reminder that that person was just so special to you. Like, my dad was so special to me that it would, it would be weird if I didn't have some sort of emotional reaction when talking about him, or, feel that ball, in my throat, or to even have an emotional reaction. It's going to be, that's normal. And I hope that I always do, because, I feel like that it just emphasizes how important he was to me, in my life, and how much I really do value him even after he's gone. And I feel like it's a healthy conversation to have. And I'm happy that other people will be able to listen to this, because listening to other people's stories after I lost my dad really helped me a lot. So I know that this conversation between us today will help so many other people. And so I'm glad to be a comfort to others.
Well, Fleur East, thank you for joining me on the Marie Curie Couch. Thank you for sharing some of Malcolm's story and yours and your family's. And it's been lovely to meet you.
Thank you so much. It's been such a lovely conversation. And your voice is so soothing, by the way. Your voice is like a hug.
Oh, that's nice.
It is really, really nice. So thank you.
So that's all for this episode of On the Marie Curie Couch. We hope it's got you thinking about matters of life and death, and perhaps starting those conversations with your own friends and family. Marie Curie's here to help. From planning ahead to coping with bereavement, you can talk through any concerns you have around the end of life with our support line team, which also includes specially trained nurses. Call us on 0800 090 2309 or search Marie Curie online. This podcast's produced and edited by Marie Curie with support from Ultimate Sound and Vision. The music featured is Time Lapse by Panoceanic. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do like and subscribe. Thanks for listening, and until next time, goodbye.